December 13th, I'll celebrate 25 years of Baltimore radio. And I don't know that we've had a whole lot of weeks like we have here this week where the Red Sox are just going to park here all week and play baseball. Folks are going to go. There's going to be a lot of empty seats. That much we know. I've been writing about that and blogging about the reasons for that. And, of course, an undefeated Ravens team now, 2-0, albeit against Buffalo and Cleveland and Jacksonville. I'll be in Jacksonville this weekend. But these are the good days, man. This is why I got into sports radio a quarter of a century ago, to have these good conversations and good fun and certainly meaningful baseball from back when baseball used to matter. This guy still thinks baseball matters, and it does at Sporting News. He is their MLB editor. He happens to be an Orioles fan, and I always point that out, and he has a wonderful T206 baseball card. Look to his Twitter at JMcGuireSN. A little bit pie trainer there, maybe an old 33 Gowdy card or something. He is Justin McGuire putting together the Sporting News postseason awards, as it were, but watching the Orioles and like all of the rest of us, dying just a little bit every day. Right, Justin?
Yeah, well, it's certainly been an interesting year to be an Orioles fan. And yes, you're talking about dying every day. I mean, how many times in the last month have we said, oh, man, this is a crucial series coming up? It seems like every one of them has had that feel to it, going back to maybe, late August, mid-August. And this Red Sox series this week certainly has that feel about it too. But it's, like you said, this is why you're a fan of a team. It's, to how many years as Orioles fans go through completely meaningless Septembers. So if you have a choice of having an anxiety-ridden September or one that's completely meaningless, I'll take the anxiety every time.
Yeah, I bought the station in 1998, the summer of 98, and we went 14 years of having September be about nothing other than the Ravens, right? And even in some of those years early on in 98, 99, the Ravens weren't very good, but the Ravens have sustained us now throughout this century, quite frankly. I mean, the stinker last year and the stinker that Billick had his last year in 07, that's about it. As September is football season around here, except the last 5 years. It's been interesting. This year's interesting unto itself because they do have a chance. They do hit the ball well. Certainly the reason they're still in this 6 weeks after many of us sort of gave up on them a little bit is the pitching's been better than we thought it was. From Gallardo to Jimenez to Bundy in the rotation, now Gausman establishing himself. There are reasons to be hopeful here that over the next 2 weeks, the Orioles can win 10 of these last 13, 14 games and find themselves in a position to win the division and take some time off or maybe host a wild card game. But there's no one right now, as the Red Sox come to town, who thinks that the Orioles won't be playing baseball 2 weeks from now.
Right. I mean, I was looking at the, they do all these postseason projections at various sites, and they have, I think 538 and both and Major League Baseball.com have their chances up to 75% of making the playoffs, and that's up from 31% at the end of August. So, I mean...
And zero from 1998 to 2011, right? Literally, right?
Exactly.
Zero.
I think zero. Any September in those years, their chances would have been zero for sure. And but that's that's an indication that they've actually you got to give the team credit. They played well when they needed to. They took that 9-game road trip into to Tampa and Detroit and Boston. It looked like it might be the end for them, and they went 6-3 and came out with 3 series victories, and that's how they kind of righted the ship at that point. And with 2 wild cards now, their chances of having at least one of those 3 slots that are available to them are pretty good right now. And I think you got to feel pretty optimistic about it, especially with the way the Blue Jays have been playing. They've had a terrible September so far, and I think the Orioles have as good a chance as anybody of snagging one of those wild cards. I mean, I'm not optimistic about winning the division, but win a few from the Red Sox here, maybe things turn around. Maybe they do have a chance at that. But one way or another, I think it's more likely than not that they'll have at least one playoff game this year.
Well, and there's no thought they're going to get swept by the Red Sox here either, or do the sweeping. That these teams do feel relatively evenly matched, and the Red Sox have clearly poured it on. They've had better pitching. They've had better hitting. I mean, hell, Hanley Ramirez is hitting better than anybody on the planet at this point, as we saw over the weekend against the Yankees. But I'd say this, and Luke and I have talked a lot about this week. they were 15 games over 500 at the All-Star break, and they begin this series 15 games. I mean, they are a 500 team since the All-Star break. That's a long time to be treading water and to feel like you have optimism, you know?
Yeah, well, I think that's the benefit of being 15 games above 500 at the All-Star break is it gives you some room to maneuver. You know, you don't have to be perfect in the second half. And particularly, like I said, I don't think that the wild card, either the East or the wild card slots are particularly strong this year. You don't have to win 96 games to get one of those slots. You know what I mean? I think 88 to 90 wins is probably going to get you, possibly the division and certainly one of the wild card spots if you get to that point. So I think that's been part of it as well. But yeah, you're right. They did a lot of the heavy lifting in the first half, and now they've just kind of are, as you said, treading water, keeping themselves in it, and how they got here, I don't know, because there's been certainly times during the season when you looked at it and thought, this is it, this is the end. I think that, like you said, you touched on the pitching. I mean, who thought Evaldo Jimenez would be the key to the stretch of baseball? I mean, he's been really good for the past 5 or 6 starts since Tillman first went down. And that's been huge. I mean, I think they've won every game he started since then. And I mean, that's something you would have lost a lot of money betting on the All-Star break. Gossman has emerged as a really good pitcher. Bundy has certainly given them more than anybody expected. So that's what it takes. You got to get some things you aren't expecting from people who are overachieving, I guess you'd say, or certainly achieving in a way that you didn't anticipate.
Justin McGuire covers all things baseball as the MLB editor at Sporting News. He's based down in Charlotte, but his heart is at Camden Yards, or at least somewhere where Babe Ruth's dad once sold some beer. You can follow him, Jay McGuire, SN, out on Twitter. And speaking of beer, he offers you 2 ice-cold tall drafts as well as a ball and glove on his Twitter at Jay McGuire. That's McGuire, SN, out on Twitter. And he's a Tario, but we don't hold that against him anymore since we left the ACC. For the Red Sox, they look to be trending in the right direction, and we'll see how it goes this week. But they're putting the pieces together when they need to. It remains to be seen. Porcello and Price, they certainly spent enough money on those pitchers. 2 of the guys the Orioles could have had if they paid enough, didn't want to pay that, and now they're going to have to go compete with that, and everyone's going to have to compete with that. Because one thing's for sure, the Red Sox are going to be in the tournament 2 weeks from now. What are they? If the Orioles are 75, the Red Sox must be 90, right?
I think they're like 98, something like
98.
that.
Wow. Okay.
And of course they have because they have a big cushion. Obviously, they're in first place in the division, but even if they somehow blow that, they've still got 2 wild card spots they would have to drop out of. So obviously their chances, they've got a lot more leeway than other teams at this point. I think you're right. They're going to be in it, likely to going to be the division winners. And that, I think the thing that concerns you if you have to play them, no matter who ends up playing them in the first round, is that offense. I mean, they hit homers like the Orioles do, but unlike the Orioles, they also hit for average, get on base, and it's just a tough lineup to face. There's guys up and down who hit well, not just power-wise. They're not just the Mark Trumbo test, but Hanley Ramirez and Mookie Betts is having a great year, and Bogarts and Bradley, all those guys, Pedroia, and Ortiz has certainly been one of the best hitters in the league. So you don't really have a weak spot when you go up and down that lineup. And I think that's the thing that's if they're going to do anything in the postseason, it's going to be based on their bats, because their starting pitching, well, it's okay. It's certainly nothing great. And their bullpen has been, relatively unreliable for most of the year. So I think that they're going to hit their way to a championship if they're going to do it.
For you, with the rest of this American League, and we talked about Toronto sort of being in a free fall. Obviously, the Yankees were pretenders until they were really pretenders over the weekend, and Boston sort of spanked them and sent them out of Fenway. But Cleveland, I was out with the Browns and the Ravens on Sunday, and I've talked to some Cleveland sports writers this week about this, and Cleveland and the Orioles have mirrored this attendance issue and sort of a fan malaise about their place in this pennant race. Cleveland with Carrasco now, Salazar, I mean, they've really had a tough couple of weeks after having lots of reason to be optimistic this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've been one of the best teams in the league all year, and they're dominating that division. But like you said, they just lost two of their best pitchers. We don't know exactly what Carrasco, and I don't think we know exactly what his status is, but there's a chance he ain't going to be back for the postseason, or certainly if he is, may not be effective. And that, I mean, yeah, they're a team that relies a lot on that very good starting rotation. That's unlike the Orioles or anybody in the East. Their pitching has really been their strength. So if they're down two of their top starters, yeah, you got to think that's going to affect their chances, especially if they're facing the Red Sox in the first round, which it looks like they would based on the standings right now. That's a tough team to beat if you don't have your top starters going.
No one talks about the Rangers, right? They're a sleepy little town in Texas, and 25, 30 games over 500, and we've seen them a few times. We don't see them very often. That's going to be a tough assignment to have to go down to Arlington and play baseball games, and the Orioles might be the team drawing that straw at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a very good team with a very good record. What's interesting is kind of fascinating to me about that team, though, is everybody remembers, certainly everybody in Baltimore who's a baseball fan remembers 2012 Orioles and how they had that amazing record in one-run games, and a lot of people thought they were kind of a fluke because of that. The Rangers this year actually have a better record in one-run games than the Orioles did 2012. They have the all-time record for best record in one-run games at this point, and their run differential is actually not very good. It's only a few runs above, they're only a few runs above even. So some of the sabermetric people might tell you that this team isn't quite as good as their record looks, but I look at them and I see a pretty darn good team. They've got some really good players in that lineup, and they've certainly got some good frontline starters. On paper, they look like the best team in the league to me, especially with Cleveland hurting. I think the Red Sox and the Rangers probably are the two best teams right now, and if I had to look for somebody to emerge to the World Series from the AL, I'd put my money on one of those two. I think that top of the rotation with Cole Hamels and Darvish, I mean, they could be pretty tough in the postseason. Before
we get to the National League, tell everybody what you do with Sporting News as the editor there for baseball. But more than that, I mean, I've been hearing about Sporting News awards, MVPs and Manager of the Year and all that other stuff. You're actually sort of the point guy at Sporting News who sort of amalgamates that and puts that together for the awards, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Sporting News has been doing baseball awards since 1936 continuously. We may have done some before that, but we've continuously given awards since 36 is what I can find.
The baseball Bible, right? The baseball Bible.
Absolutely, yeah. We have a long-standing tradition with this, and we do Major League Player of the Year plus league-specific comeback player, rookie manager, and then overall Executive of the Year. All-star teams. We do a variety of different things, but I'd say probably the two that are our biggest awards would be MLB Player of the Year and MLB Executive of the Year. And what makes our awards a little bit unique is that it's actually voted on by the people who are in the business. So our player awards are voted on by players throughout the league. Last year we had 300 and some players vote. The managers are voted on by their fellow managers, and the executives are voted on by their fellow executives. So that, it's not our opinion, it's not the opinion of writers or broadcasters or anybody in the media, it's the people themselves who are in the clubhouses and the executive suites making those decisions. So we think it's kind of a different take on some of the awards, and that gives it a value that at least gives you a different perspective on it, I think. And I find it fascinating to see who the players pick, because sometimes it's not the same as the writers.
You said 300 plus. Who decides who picks and who doesn't? Does everyone get a ballot and then you just figure out what you get back?
Yeah, we send out ballots to all 30 teams, and then it's usually the media relations person, somebody who has some title like that, where they're in charge of dealing with the media or player relations media. The person who sets up interviews, that kind of thing. So they'll go in, they'll take the ballot and bring them into the clubhouse. And I don't know if everybody does it the same way, but I think a lot of them, they'll just sort of put them out on a table somewhere and say, return these to Joe or whoever, is in charge of them. And then the players can pick them up and vote if they want. Obviously, so, you get better results from some teams than others, but we've had teams that have sent back as many as 20 ballots. Usually I'd say a typical number is somewhere around 10. Like I said, that gets us to 300. So, 10 to 12 players voting. And obviously this time of year, there's expanded rosters theoretically you could have even more than 25 guys who have access to the ballot. So it's possible you could have, 40 guys voting. I don't think we've ever had that many. But I think typically somewhere from 10 to 15 for most teams. And I think that gives us a pretty good, like I said, if you get 300 ballots, that's a pretty good cross-section of players. And one of the things that we've been doing, we started doing this last year because one of the teams suggested it, is we send the ballot, an English version of the ballot and also a Spanish version of the ballot. Because obviously so many Major League Baseball players are native Spanish speakers. And that has actually helped increase the participation a lot, I think, because some of these guys who maybe aren't as strong in English now have an opportunity to read something that they're much clearer on, and return it. So we get a lot of them return that way, too.
Justin McGuire, longtime MLB editor for Sporting News, joining us here. You can follow him, his beer, his ball, his glove, and his old baseball cards at J McGuire SN. I want to ask you this. When's the last time you were at Camden Yards for a game? Because you are an Orioles fan.
The last time I was at Camden Yards was the night they clinched in 2014 against the Blue Jays.
Okay.
Which was about 2 years ago this week or last week, I think.
That was a pretty good night. There was a lot of pie served that night, as I remember it.
It was a great night, and it was sort of just pure coincidence. It was a weeknight game, and I just decided to go because I hadn't been to a game that year, and they were having such a great year, and I said, I'm going to just take a day off in the middle of the week. And I picked it maybe like a week or so ahead, probably 2 weeks ahead of time. I just sort of picked that day because it was easy to get tickets, and I was able to get a decent airline fare. And so I just went up for that game, and it just happened to be the game that could clinch. And Ubaldo was pitching that night, and I thought, oh God! But he actually pitched well enough, and they won that game. So I was there for that game. And it was a lot of fun, obviously. And I had never been to anything like that before. So
well, and as much fun as you had, and you wait all your life as an Oriole fan. How do you explain all these empty seats as an out-of-town guy? I mean, I've tried to explain it last week. I've written various blogs. Clearly, my stance on Angelos and not buying tickets. The Free the Birds walkout was 10 years ago next week now. And one of the real fears I had, and I'm going to address this as I write even more now that the Red Sox are here and the tickets are still, $12 and anybody can go get them and no one wants them, and there's always an excuse about why people don't go. It is alarming at this point, and it's really sad. And one of the things I wrote about 10 years ago is people are going to lose interest in this. People are going to stop caring about the Orioles, and I don't think there's anything that says I don't care a whole lot more than empty seats when they're playing for first place against the Red Sox in September.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, not being in Baltimore, I don't know that I feel comfortable addressing the reasons why that is.
But is it alarming to you, watching it from afar?
It is certainly concerning, I'll put it that way. The one thing that does give me some hope is when you see like their local TV ratings are actually pretty good. They have some of the best in baseball in terms of those local ratings. So there's obviously some interest there, but yeah, it is surprising that a team that's clearly right in the thick of things and is playing meaningful baseball right now, that they can't get good crowds to come out. And again, this series against the Red Sox will be kind of interesting because it is obviously a traditional rival. It's a team they're fighting first place for, but it's also in the middle of the week, which is, or I guess hurts a little bit as well. So I don't know. Yeah, I wish I had an explanation, but I would hate to even venture not being there. And I can't say that I help at all because I don't go to games very often, not living there. So, I don't want to point fingers at anybody else because I'm not helping the situation myself.
National League. Yeah. I mean, I hear you being from out of town. I mean, it's the Washington thing. I guess a good time to bring this in. People ask me where are all the fans. I'm like, well, I mean, the old man bitched 20 years ago that if they split this thing, there wouldn't be enough fans to go around. I don't necessarily buy that. There are plenty of people around town spending $20 on something tonight that isn't Orioles baseball. They're more interested in going to a movie or doing something else with their money than coming to an Orioles game. But the Washington fan base and the way that they've not only put a team down there, one of the things about the Senators is they always sucked. Both incarnations of the Senators always sucked. This team doesn't suck, and that is part of this, is that there are a lot of people down in the district and in Bowie and Laurel saving their money for playoff tickets, for Nationals playoff tickets.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that's absolutely, there's truth to that. I lived in Northern Virginia for most of the 90s. And, back then, the Orioles, that was the home team if you lived in Northern Virginia or Washington. That was the team people cared about. That was the team the Post reported on. People would be, talking about when they were in the playoffs in '96 and '97. There was quite a bit of excitement, in the district and in Virginia because that was your team, and people would companies I worked for would buy boxes and corporate suites. You'd have access to tickets, and it was kind of it was a big thing. And of course, this was when Camden Yards was still relatively new. But I have to imagine that having a team in Washington has hurt. It certainly hurt with that part of the market. But I don't know if that explains all of it, but you got to think that's part of it for sure.
Well, we don't sit around here and dream of this I-95 World Series, and I know we talked about it a little bit 2 years ago and even 4 years ago, but, the Orioles sneak into this tournament. That sort of sits behind it. The Yankees and the Mets aren't both going to be in, and certainly the Cubs and the White Sox aren't going to both be in. This would be something unique between Baltimore and Washington because there really is no rivalry between these teams.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that would, if they were playing the World Series, that would strengthen the rivalry in a way that nothing else ever could. But again, not being up there, I don't really get I don't get a great sense of the rivalry or what it really is or could be. But you sort of make a good point that both teams have been pretty good for the last 5 years or so. So, and they play each other a number of times during the season. So if it's not happening now, maybe it's not meant to happen. I don't know.
Cubs going to do this? I mean, I was out at Wrigley Field a couple weeks ago seeing Pearl Jam, and I was at the Chicago airport for about an hour and a half on Sunday night after the Cleveland game, and they certainly think they're going to win the World Series there.
Well, here's the thing, and you know this is Phil saying, but the Cubs are the best team in baseball. I don't think there's any question about that. But there's 10 teams that make the postseason, right? So no one team, no matter how good they are, is the favorite against the field, right? So I've seen things that indicate the Cubs have 25-30% chance of winning the World Series, which is with a 10-team field. That's very good odds, right? But it still means there's a 70-75% chance they aren't going to win it. So again, if you're picking against the field, I wouldn't pick the Cubs. But if you had to pick one team, I probably would pick the Cubs. Now I'll say, as somebody who makes my living in baseball media, the Cubs in the World Series would be a great thing for the interest in baseball. I mean, nothing would get the attention of non-baseball fans more than the Cubs being in the World Series for the first time since 1945 and having a chance to win it for the first time since 1908. I think you look back at when the Red Sox won it in 2004, that story became sort of more than about baseball, and I think this will be a similar thing. So if you're somebody who wants, the outside world to pay attention to baseball, the Cubs would be a great story for sure. Americana
and baseball. He's doing it all at Sporting News. Justin, always great to visit with you, and I hope I'm visiting in a couple of weeks talking about Oriole playoff baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. If they're in that wild card game or in the AL Division Series, give me a call and we'll chat about it and see what we think. See if they have what their pitching matchups look like. I know the last time they're in a wild card game, they had Joe Saunders versus Yu Darvish, and we all thought they were going to lose, and then they ended up winning. So you never know with these one and done games.
You keep putting that ice cold beer out on Twitter, it makes me just want to grab it in my screen and drink it. But I appreciate it. Always great visiting with you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Okay, Nish. Thanks a lot.
You got it. Justin McGuire. He is the MLB editor for Sporting News at JMcGuireSN out on Twitter. You can email me anytime, anywhere, nasty@WNST.net. We're out on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on Facebook, streaming live on YouTube on our WNS TV channel. And, of course, anytime, anywhere you want it, the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault has it there for you. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear. It's all brought to you by BuyAToyota.com. Morning newspaper ships at 7 a.m. every morning to your email inbox. It's free. It's easy. It's powered up by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in shape. Even though it's the fall season, bikini season always. Last but never least, any breaking news that happens here this week or any week comes to you first on the WNST text service. You'll always be the Baltimore sports fan who knows first. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and Dennis Colatzos will be here on Thursday driving you home and get you ready for the Orioles and the Red Sox finale on Thursday night. And then, of course, Arizona in town this week. The Ravens in Jacksonville. Luke and I will be on the backfields in Owings Mills reporting on that all week long. The undefeated Baltimore Ravens. I got to say that while I still have the opportunity because it's not going to last forever, but it is nice to be 2-0. And I appreciate all the love coming forth this week on the Bone Marrow Registry. And there goes my hero, Eric Weddle, on Tuesday night at Adams Jeep in Aberdeen, swabbing for There Goes My Hero. And then next week on Wednesday night, Alex Lewis and Ryan Jensen will join us at a Greenmount Station in Hampstead with some crab cakes and some football chatter and some swabbing for There Goes My Hero and the Bone Marrow Registry. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.